July 12, 1991, Salem, Massachusetts. Local artist and interior designer Martha Brailsford goes for a short sail with her new friend Tom Maimoni on his boat, Counterpoint. Two would sail away that day, but only Tom would return. When Martha's husband becomes worried because his wife doesn't come home that night, the town of Salem, its people, law enforcement, and one witch will join forces to locate her. What they find instead is a murderer. This is the story of Martha Brailsford, the woman, the witch, and the sea monster, Tom Maimoni. Hey y'all, I'm Chris Calvert.
And I'm her husband, Rob Podorf. Welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
For better or worse.
Till death do us part.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, welcome. And for our friends in Hungary.
Okay.
Idvuzayuk.
I'm ready to start traveling the world with you, honey. You'll be able to say welcome, except we're the wrong people.
Yeah, well, the problem is
I'd be going, where are we?
I only know these just for like 30 seconds.
And then they're gone.
And then they're gone.
It's like high school calculus.
It really is.
Gone.
Oh my God.
Out of my head anyway.
Yep.
Well, wherever you're listening, be sure to like, rate, and review. That helps other people to find us. You can listen to us on just about any podcast platform out there.
Yep.
You can also watch us on YouTube.
Yes.
Be sure to join. I forgot to say this last week. Be sure to join the In-Laws and Outlaws. That's our closed Facebook group.
Yep.
Lots of fun people in there. Answer a couple questions and you're in.
Yep.
And if you have invited people to be in the group, make sure they answer the questions as well.
Yes.
I leave them in there in the queue for a pretty long time and give them a chance. But after that, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But we don't want to lose you,
Yep.
so please answer the questions.
And they're not difficult questions at all. Even I can answer them.
They're not.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah. I just realized one thing, though. I have to be careful with my coffee here because I froth my milk. And if I do this.
You get a mustache?
There's my mustache. So I have to be careful of that.
Good thing you're not drinking Kool-Aid today.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we get started, let me thank some sources: the Boston Globe, Salem News, the Massachusetts Court of Appeals, Unsolved Mysteries, Smithsonian Magazine, the North Adams Transcript, the Berkshire Eagle, the Daily Item, LaurieCabot.com, SalemWeb.com, and the book Counterpoint, A Murder in Massachusetts Bay by Margaret Press. I did read it. I will have a link to the book and everything else in the show notes.
All right. Well, you ready?
I am.
All right, let's do it.
Well, today we're in Salem, Massachusetts.
The Salem witch trial.
We're going to talk a little bit about that. We got witches today.
Oh, nice.
Roger Conant was the founder of Salem and became one of the first governors of Massachusetts when he took over a fishing settlement in Gloucester in 1625.
Okay.
The only reason I'm talking about him is because one of our main characters is related to him.
Yeah.
Roger Conant is often described by historians as a calm, tolerant, peaceful leader who often felt uncomfortable with the strict and intolerant ways of Puritan life in the colonies.
Okay.
So he moved his family to what is now modern-day Hull in 1624 until Reverend John White invited Roger to relocate and become governor of their fishing settlement in Gloucester.
Okay.
Because Roger wasn't for all the Puritan ideals. He wanted to live in the settlement that was based on commerce, not religion. But this colony failed and lots of people went back to England. But Roger planned to move the remaining colonists to a nearby area with better fishing and farmland, which is now modern-day Salem. Yeah. In 1626, they built houses, they cleared the land for crops, and it is thought that Roger Conant built the first house in Salem on what is now Essex Street, which is opposite the town market.
All right.
Now, of course, Salem, just as you said before, is most notable for the witch trials of 1692,
Yep.
when 19 witches were hanged on Gallows Hill.
Wow.
No witches were burned at the stake in Salem.
Really? I always thought, okay.
That actually happened in England.
Really?
And they did it because they were concerned during medieval times with post-mortem sorcery.
They didn't want him coming back to life. Jeez. Okay.
Yeah. Not today, Satan.
Yeah.
But these witches in Salem, there are still some there today.
Really?
That's called foreshadowing.
There are witches in Salem?
There are still people who say that they are witches in Salem.
Wow.
Not the kind of witches you think. We're going to talk a little bit about this.
Not the, I'll get you my pretty?
And your little dog, too.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
In the decades following the American Revolution, Salem's sailing ships returned from China and East India full of tea and spices and silks and porcelain, ivory, gold. And according to historian Samuel Morrison, quote, Boston was the Spain, Salem was the Portugal in the race for the Oriental opulence.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So Salem's a hugely profitable trade with the Orient transformed this, quote, hard-scrabble New England seaport, end quote, into a global powerhouse. And by the early 1800s, the wealthiest city per capita in the United States was Salem.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know what I enjoy the most, especially from old texts and things, are the prose that they use.
Yes.
It's very eloquent.
Well, even the newspapers are pretty eloquent.
Yeah, you can talk about shoes and make it sound like it's,
majestic.
majestic.
Except the shoes were $3, like when I'm reading this in the newspaper.
True.
But now that I've set the scene, I did all that for a reason. I want you to meet Thomas Joseph Maimoni. Tom.
Okay.
Tom was born in Framingham, Massachusetts in 1945.
Okay.
He moved with his family to Pawtucket Island when he was a baby.
Okay.
He was held back in third grade by the nuns at the Catholic school he attended. Tom was a dreamer, an artist, a pathological liar.
Okay.
He served in Vietnam as an enlisted man, but he would tell people he was an Air Force pilot during Vietnam. His resume would state that he graduated from RISD, Rhode Island School of Design. Very, very hard to get into this school, very prestigious.
Oh, yeah.
And that he also had his doctorate from the University of Rhode Island.
And he didn't.
Neither of these things are true.
Okay.
He would have 4 wives. But when he meets a woman named Patty in the summer of 1987, he tells her he's a mechanical engineer and that his wife had recently died of cancer.
Wow.
Tom tells Patty that he had a doctorate in education and a master's of architecture, as well as a degree in mechanical engineering.
This guy, yeah.
Yeah. He tells her of the heroic and harrowing times he spent as a pilot in Vietnam. And he tells Patty, who'd been divorced for about 2 years, that he was working for Arthur D. Little in Cambridge as a consultant.
And who's Arthur D. Little?
I knew you were going to ask that question.
Okay.
Founded in 1886, Arthur D. Little is the world's first management consulting firm.
Oh.
So very prestigious.
Okay.
So he's just weaving this tale about himself, how smart he is, how many degrees he has, including his heroics as a pilot during Vietnam.
Yeah, exactly.
In Vietnam, as Forrest Gump would say.
I have to pay. Sorry, it's the only thing that came to mind.
Patty is a special education teacher in Salem. She's just like a wonderful, wonderful person. She liked to scuba dive. So did Tom. She was a classically trained pianist. And to Patty, all these lies that Tom has told her made her feel like Tom was a catch. And not long after, these two buy a sailboat, which Tom named Counterpoint.
Okay.
He'd been a member of the Cove Yacht Club since 1981.
How do you get to be a part of that?
The Yacht Club.
Yeah. Did he lie his way into it?
I have no idea.
All
He
right.
had to pay to be there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But now he finally had his sailboat and he had a slip at the club. And Patty and Tom are married about a year after they meet.
Okay.
And these two move into an apartment in Salem.
All right.
Then in 1990, Tom is laid off from Arthur Little, and he picked up contract work for a little bit.
Okay.
But by the end of the year, he was actually working as an engineer with Parker Brothers Game Company,
Oh, really?
which is based in Salem.
Monopoly.
Yeah. Pass go.
Yeah.
Do not collect $200 or
Life.
do collect $200.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's after this that he and Patty decide to buy a house on the peninsula separating Salem and Beverly Harbors.
Okay.
This peninsula is known as Salem Willows.
Right.
Now, Tom and Patty get a dog, a corgi. Her name is Sally. Sally had her own little tiny life jacket. It was embroidered with her name on it.
Nice.
And when I read that, I thought that's exactly what we would do for Scotty.
Exactly. He has his own papoose, so why wouldn't he have his own life jacket? Embroidered.
His little mat that he eats off of has his name on it.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's sad.
But Tom's got this sailboat payment. He's got 2 car payments, this new condominium. He's got to pay for the yacht club.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly he's laid off from Parker Brothers. And Patty helped him to start looking for a job. He needed a new resume. He needed new lies.
Yeah.
So while his wife is off working and he's laid off, Tom is out walking the streets, walking around, telling everybody how great he is. And he meets Roxy Platt, a divorced mother of 2. She's a psychiatric social worker who lived in Marblehead.
Okay.
Now, Roxy's a runner, and that's how she actually met Tom one day. He was walking the dog, Sally, and she was on the same trail. And when they meet, Tom tells her that he used to live in Marblehead, too, but now he lives in Salem. He also tells her that he owned a 30-foot cow sailboat and owned 2 moorings in Marblehead Harbor.
Okay.
And Tom asks her, "Do you want to see my boat?" That's a euphemism.
Well, I was gonna say that, and I thought, no, just leave it alone.
Do you want to see my boat? See, even though Tom is married to Patty, he's lied to Roxy and told her that his wife is dead. She thinks he's nice. She's walking in the direction of the dock where the sailboat is docked. So she follows Tom to the public landing, and he shows her his sloop, Counterpoint, his sailboat.
Yep.
And the 2 of them get on board, and they take the boat out. And he allows her to take the helm of the boat, and he tells her that he can tell that she knows what she's doing. And he also says that he likes that Roxy isn't wearing fingernail polish, and that her hair was natural with no hairspray.
Okay.
It's 1991, so maybe there was a little Aquanet in the air in Salem. There was a little bit of Aquanet everywhere in 1991.
A little holdover from the 80s.
But these 2 both liked classical music. He gets her on the boat. They sail out. He gets out some wine, some cheese.
Jeez.
And Tom and Roxy will sail 4 or 5 more times during the next few weeks. But on the 5th sail, Tom started acting strange. Roxy and Tom, the widower, he takes the sailboat out. He anchors it up the coast from Marblehead. They're sitting in the cockpit eating sandwiches, and Tom got on this rant again about women with long fingernails and hairspray. But then he switches gears and starts to talk about all the sex he's had with women on the sailboat.
Okay.
One of them, according to Tom, was a former nun who liked to give him, quote, blowjobs all over the boat, end quote.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's given her a visual.
Yeah. Yeah.
When he pulls up the anchor and starts to sail again, Tom tells Roxy, "You know what? I think I'll sail naked. You don't mind, do you?"
What?
Yeah. And before Roxy can say, "Keep it in your pants, Tom,"
Yeah.
he has them off and the old bait and tackles flopping in the sea air.
The twig and berries.
But that's okay. He tells her to feel free to take her clothes off too.
Yeah, of course he did.
But Roxy politely asks him to put his shorts back on, but he doesn't. And eventually it's not just the boat's mast that's up. It's Tom's.
Wow.
And he finds ways to be around her while he has a raging erection.
Wow.
She keeps the conversation very surface. She stays away from him. I mean, but she's pretty much held captive.
Yeah.
She's on this boat.
Yeah, she got no choice right now.
Yeah, he's at the helm, sailing the boat, masked up, all of them.
Yeah.
Then he sits next to her and tries to kiss her. Then when she's like trying to get away from him, he kisses the top of her head. She does her best to keep her distance. And when they finally turn back and sail for the yacht club, Tom puts his pants back on. And then they get to the dock and he says to Roxy, quote, "Let's not make a big deal of this. You don't have to tell anybody," end quote.
Wow.
And that's when Roxy's thinking, this dude is not single. He's got somebody.
Yep.
He has been lying to me, lying like a rug.
Yep.
Still, he asks Roxy if she wants to go ballroom dancing. So the naked sailing wasn't enough. Before she gets off, he says, "Hey, let's go ballroom dancing." Yeah.
Is that a euphemism?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully, if there are other people around, but maybe.
Okay.
But he says, "Let's go to ballroom dancing on July 10th.
Okay.
And Tom says, "I'm on vacation for 2 weeks and I want to go on an extended sail." But when it got closer to July 10th, he called Roxy to say, "I have to take this business trip, but when I get back, I'm going to be on vacation." And he says to her, "Let's go sailing on July 12th. But Roxy's really suspicious, obviously.
Yeah.
And she pulls out the Salem phone book because that's what we did back in the day, kids.
Right.
You pull out the phone book and she finds Tom Maimoni. She calls his house and you can imagine her surprise when a woman picks up.
Yep.
And Roxy promptly hangs up, but she's still planning on going on that sail on July 12th. And she's going to confront him about it.
Okay.
Tom and Patty would spend the 4th of July with friends on the sailboat, but Patty was leaving to go to Kansas where some of her family lived, and Patty would be gone for 2 weeks. And when I read that, I thought, all of these men who wait for their wives to leave town and then get into trouble.
Yeah.
What gives?
Yeah.
I mean, we've done so many cases where these assholes are just waiting for the one person who holds them accountable to walk away.
Yep.
Anyway, some of the other couples they hung out with, like Dr. Ray Mount and his girlfriend Charlene, they both think that Tom liked to be controlling of the women around him.
Yeah, of course.
Tom and I would get along so well, wouldn't we, Rob? A man telling me what to do.
Let's move on, shall we?
All I can say, women, is bet on yourself every day and twice on Sunday, honey.
There you go.
Then Tom meets Rosemary Farmer. Rosemary was an artist and a substitute teacher who was going through a divorce, and she was selling her home in Pride's Crossing in Beverly. It's an exclusive area, and Tom showed up when Rosemary wasn't at home, and he leaves his name with a niece who's babysitting Rosemary's kids.
Okay.
Rosemary calls Tom when she sees that he's interested in buying the house and makes arrangements for him to visit on Tuesday, July 9th, 1991.
All right.
So he shows up and he has this whole story for Rosemary. He tells her his name is Tom Mahoney, more like Tom Baloney. He thinks that the house would be, quote, perfect for his out-of-town clients, end quote, and that he didn't want to go through a real estate agent. I mean, why would he? They're going to vet him.
Yeah.
They're going to see who he really is.
Sure.
He tells her that he has all these computers in his house, and he wondered if the neighborhood could handle the increased traffic from all of his clientele. He would have his attorney draw up a sales agreement.
Okay.
He goes into this whole song and dance about him being on vacation, and he had sold these townhouses, and he's living on his boat. But Rosemary's like, look it, dude, I've got another offer through my real estate agent, and I need to know if you're being real or not.
Right.
And I need to know if you're going to make this offer by 8 p.m. that night.
Okay.
So she's in the middle of this divorce, and Tom makes a plan to meet Rosemary's husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, at a dock in Manchester, just up the coast from Salem, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
All right.
And Rosemary gets there, and she waits for her soon-to-be ex and Tom to finish their chat, And then she walks over to where Tom has docked his sailboat. So she's waiting for her husband just to finish up before she goes over to see what's going on.
Sure.
Tom invites Rosemary on board, shows her some typed pages, some sort of informal purchase agreement, which I'm quite sure was BS.
Mm-hmm.
But she's looking at it and he says, hey, let's go for a sail. And she says, no, I have to meet the realtor at 4:30.
Yeah.
And somehow Tom convinces Rosemary to call from a payphone her realtor and move the appointment back to 6:30 that night.
Jeez.
Now, she only has until 8 p.m. for this other offer on the house. And she climbs aboard Counterpoint, and off they go. But all the while, she's saying to him, don't forget, I need to be back.
Yeah.
Tom knows she's an artist, so he starts to talk about all the art classes he took at RISD. And oh, by the way, I used to work for NASA designing biomedical equipment.
What?
Good Lord. Every word out of this man's mouth is a lie.
Gee whiz.
Then Tom tells Rosemary that he's recently lost his wife to cancer. And Rosemary had lost her brother to cancer. And Tom actually knew this.
Really?
I'm not surprised by this. I think he checked her out first. He wanted to know about her so he would know what to talk about.
Wow.
Tom goes below into the galley, comes back up with wine glasses, and he's like, here, have some Zinfandel. And she allows him to pour her this tiny little glass, and she sips on it. And he tells Rosemary that, you look like my wife. And he starts touching her arm.
Wow.
And then he starts touching her shoulder. And then he starts touching her leg. Now, he waits until he's out in the middle of nowhere to do this.
Of course.
Rosemary's confused. She doesn't really know how to handle the situation because on one hand, he might be buying her house.
Right.
And she doesn't want to jeopardize that. And on the other, he's a bald dude who just lost his wife and seems like he's really struggling with his grief.
Right.
But then he starts touching the inside of her shorts and under her blouse. And Rosemary blocks his hands and says to him, no, and don't.
Wow.
And she's trying to get the conversation back to the house that Tom supposedly wants to purchase.
Right.
But as Tom's sailing, he's not taking her back to where she needs to be. He's taking her farther away from the dock where he picked her up. And she's saying to him, I need to get back.
Yeah.
I've pushed this appointment back, and you are pushing my patience, so let's go back. Then Tom, out of the blue, asks her, quote, how modest are you, end quote.
What?
And I'm sure you can see where this is going.
Oh, man.
But Rosemary tells him, quote, well, it depends on the context, end quote. Tom proceeds to take off all his clothes and then asks her if she would like to go swimming. And she said, no. I don't want to go swimming. I want to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah. No means no.
Right.
But then he tells her he's going swimming. And if she's worried about being naked, there was a suit that she could wear. And she tells him again, no.
Yeah.
Then while he's naked, he leans over her. See, this is his thing. He gets all excited. He leans over her to get his dive gear that's stored under the seat where she's sitting. And he gets his wetsuit, his dive gear, and a scrub brush. And when she won't go in the water, when she tells him no again, he pulls out these reprints of research papers he had written for NASA, supposedly.
Yeah.
He puts on this wetsuit and he goes overboard. And she can hear him scrubbing under the boat.
What?
Yeah, he's under the boat, scrubbing.
Jeez.
This goes on for like 20 minutes.
Oh, Lord.
She sees another boat in the distance. I think it was a couple of boys, but she decides not to call them over to help her because she doesn't want to make a scene.
Right.
And she didn't know if the boys would be any safer than Tom.
Right.
So after 20 minutes of scratching, Tom gets out of the water, back on board, takes off his wetsuit, dries off his naked body, and while he's naked, goes down below. Then he calls her down into the galley for some homemade brownies. These are actually brownies that his wife Patty made for him
wow.
while she's in Kansas.
Jeez.
She goes down with him. I guess he's put on shorts at this point, but he's groping her again and telling her how much he misses his wife. And all this time he's talking, he's putting his head in her lap and he's putting his hands up her shorts. Now, Rosemary tries to flatter him to get him talking about himself instead of touching her. So she asks him about NASA.
Oh, all right.
And he jumps up and asks if she would like to see his, quote, bionic hand, end quote.
What?
Yeah. And at this point, he tries to force her into the sleeping quarters because that's where the bionic hand is.
Oh, gee whiz.
She tells him to let go of her, and he says to Rosemary, quote, just lay down with me. I just want to hold you. I'll be all right, end quote. He's pleading with her, and he's tugging at her. And as she's telling him no, Rosemary said that his eyes changed. They went from pitiful to dangerous. And she told him he had to let her go and that she needed to go home and they could do something another time, but not today because she had to meet the realtor.
That was smart on her part.
It really was very smart.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen like testimony of hers where she was like, I just had to get my stern voice out and be like, no.
Yeah.
When they make it topside again, he begins groping her all over again and she picks up her keys. She stands on the edge of the deck and she says, if you touch me one more time, I'm jumping overboard.
Wow.
So he says, okay, I'm sorry. I'll take you home. Yeah, Tom.
Yeah.
But she's long past her 6:30 appointment, and she's really close to this 8 p.m. deadline with the other buyer. And when she finally gets to the dock, Rosemary does exchange pleasantries with him and says, we'll get together soon. And he wants to measure rooms in the house. We'll get together soon. I need to measure rooms in your house.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, Tom is never going to measure those rooms.
No.
And Rosemary wouldn't see him again until it was in a courtroom. Next, meet Martha Laurel Conant Brailsford.
Okay.
She's born on May 8th, 1954 in Hackensack, New Jersey, to Norma and Herbert. She grew up in Chicago and Cleveland. Martha has two sisters, Carrie, and a twin sister, Muriel. She has a brother named David.
Okay.
Now, Martha met her husband, Bill Brailsford, on a blind date in 1972.
We met on a blind date.
We met on a blind date.
We sure
That's right.
did.
He was my date to the Kentucky Derby.
Yep.
He was an expensive blind date.
Was it worth it?
Yeah, I guess. All these years later, I guess I'll keep you.
No.
But these two meet on a blind date. It's 1972. She's 17 and taking classes at Endicott College in Beverly, which is just the city north of Salem.
Okay.
And Martha's father was originally from New Jersey and was one of the many descendants of Roger Conant, the founder of Salem.
Oh, wow.
Martha was 17. Bill is 21. He's working as a launchman at a yacht club in Marblehead. She went with him to a dinner dance for the launch operators at the end of the season. And after that night, these two were inseparable. Martha finished at Endicott and enrolled at Boston University and earned a bachelor's degree in German in 1977.
Okay.
2 years later, in 1979, Bill began working for a ferry company. But for 6 months, he and Martha lived on a 50-foot charter sailboat in the Caribbean.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Bill was the captain.
Nice.
And Martha was his first mate.
Oh.
But she was his only mate.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is Martha knew her way around a boat more than the average person.
Sure.
Bill and Martha were married in 1982.
Okay.
They were both lovers of the outdoors, but after living for a few years in Marblehead, they bought and renovated a house on Cove Avenue in the Willows by a small beach. And I read in one source that it was actually an old inn that they gutted and turned into a house.
Nice.
Don't know if that's true, but I do know that they gutted it from the third floor to the bottom, and they started from scratch.
Nice.
And it took them a while to make this house livable.
Right.
Martha worked as a kitchen designer and was known for her interior design skills.
Nice.
But just before the 4th of July holiday in 1991, she was laid off. But to her, it was kind of a blessing because it was more time to pursue her own artistic clothing business she had named Uncommon Threads.
Oh, neat.
Martha was a huge animal rights activist and a member of PETA and the Citizens to End Animal Suffering and Exploitation.
Okay.
And in fact, Martha and Bill had a dog, Rudy.
It's a great name.
It's a great name.
Rudy.
I think Rudy was actually a rescue. But one day, while Martha's out walking Rudy, Martha meets Tom Maimoni and his corgi, Sally. Or his wife Patty's corgi, Sally. I keep saying this over and over again because it was Patty's dog.
Right.
And these two, just like the other women, strike up a conversation. Tom tells Martha that he's despondent after the death of his wife to cancer.
Jeez.
And Martha, like Rosemary, had lost someone close to her from cancer, and she really felt for Tom. Martha is like one of these people who was very good at consoling others. That's what her friends all said about her. On this day, July 12th, 1991, Martha was to meet her new friend who was in need. She's dressed in khaki shorts, a hot pink top. She put her hair in French braids, and she sets off for Salem Willows Park. That was at the end of her street.
Okay.
That was exactly where she had first met Tom and Sally.
Okay.
She was wearing these little fish earrings, and with her were some brochures. She was going to get Tom's opinion on them just to get his mind off of his grief.
Right.
So she's starting this company, this clothing company, and so she has these brochures, and she's thinking, I'll show these to Tom. He's so sad. Maybe I can get him to, like, give me some ideas. I don't think she cared, but she was trying to be nice.
She's got a big heart.
She does. She has a huge heart. And on this particular day, she's also a little worried about Rudy because he had a sore paw. So she tied him to the front porch so that while she was gone, people could come by and pet him and say hello. Apparently, Rudy was like, a favorite in the neighborhood.
Sure.
And while walking toward the beach, Martha passes some of her friends. She waves and says, "Can't talk, girls, gotta meet a friend. Quote, we're going for a sail," end quote. When Martha arrives, the dock is busy, and Tom made his entrance known to everybody by struggling to dock his sailboat and almost plowing into another boat.
Wow.
But Counterpoint and Tom docked, and Martha, the experienced sailor, she just jumps aboard.
Okay.
Martha Brailsford would never come home again.
Wow.
At 8 p.m. that night, July 12th, Dr. Ray and his girlfriend see Tom's boat in the slip. His wetsuit and some beach towels are hung up on the sailboat to dry. He's obviously been out for a sail and a dive. They see this and remember it.
Right.
At 11:15 p.m., a registered nurse who was taking care of an elderly woman called the police to report that about 8 o'clock that night, she heard screaming coming from a boat offshore. A woman's scream. And she said to them, "I think someone should go out there. It looked like this boat. It was a sailboat heading up toward Cat Island."
Wow.
She tells the 911 operator that she saw that very same boat earlier, and she could hear, quote, "two people arguing," end quote. But the 911 operator tells her to call the Marblehead police, thinking this is just a domestic dispute, and the Marblehead police need to check it out.
Right.
And they offered to check out the report, but nothing came of it that night.
Okay.
When Martha's husband, Bill, comes home at 9 p.m. that night, Rudy is still tied to the front porch.
Oh, no.
His wife, Martha's purse was in the house, and her car is parked in the driveway. And it looked to him as if Martha had left, intending to come back very soon, but she never made it home.
Right.
At 11 p.m., when Martha still isn't home and there's been no phone call, he tried not to worry, but by 1 a.m., Bill was at the police station.
Right.
He brings with him a photo of Martha, and the police enter her name into a computer system. Then Bill goes to the hospital. No Martha. By 3 a.m., he was out with a flashlight searching for his wife on his own. Martha took the same route each day through the willows with Rudy, and her husband followed her course along this local beach over these rocks, through the adjoining parks. And when light broke the next day, he just kept walking this route. And then he started calling family and friends, and people came to his house. Somebody designed a flyer, and this whole search party is organized by that morning. Bill goes back to the police station, and they tell him, "We haven't found anything." And he says, "I've been up all night looking, and she hasn't shown up." And it's very much out of her character. He didn't think there was anything on her mind. They hadn't had any marital difficulties. These two were very, very happy.
Right.
The only thing that worried Bill was that Martha had a habit of letting people know what she thought of them if they were doing something wrong. So she would yell at people who were polluting or would drop trash.
Right.
On the other hand, in addition to having what he called a big mouth, she had a big heart. And he was worried that just like picking up stray dogs and animals, which is what she did, she picked up a stray person and it hadn't gone well.
Right.
He wanted to know what the police were going to do. But Bill wasn't going to wait around for them to do anything.
Okay.
One of the places along Martha's walking route was a park called Winter Island, and it was joined by a little causeway from the Willows where she lived. It was less than a half a mile long. It had a lot of tiny little secluded rocky beaches, a public pier, a clam shack, those kinds of things.
Right.
He'd already walked this route in the middle of the night, but he was back again, and he was lucky enough to run into some people who knew Martha, and Bill told them, here's what's going on.
Okay.
And they tell him, yeah, we saw Martha yesterday morning, just about this time.
Wow.
She was with some guy that we didn't really know, tall, balding. He had dark hair. He had a little dog with him. And Bill recognizes the description of this guy. It was one of what he called Martha's strays. It was Martha's new friend. She'd actually called him. He knew that this guy was a widower and that she had met him last spring on one of her walks, but Bill couldn't remember this guy's name, even though Martha had talked about him all the time.
Right.
But he knew where he lived. He knew he lived on Settler's Way. And Bill just basically tells the police, look, she tells me about all these people. I mean, I read that and I thought, yeah, when Rob and I are having dinner, I'll be like, oh, I saw so-and-so today. Or did you know that this was closing? You know, They had one of those types of relationships. So he knew who her, quote, new friend was, the widower.
Right.
Just didn't know his name.
Okay.
But knows where he lives. So Bill goes over to these condos with a friend, and one of the neighbors was out early that morning. He's working on his car. And with his help, Bill is eventually able to determine the name and address of Tom Maimoni. And the first time Bill knocked on the door, there's no answer. But he goes back a little bit later, and he finds Tom is at home. And when Tom greets him, Bill said he had come to ask if Tom had seen Martha the day before. I'm here to see if you've talked to Martha. I'm worried about her.
Right.
And Tom says to him, quote, Martha who? End quote.
Wow.
Then Bill says to him, look, dude, you walked with my wife several times a week. You have a dog named Sally. We have a dog named Rudy.
Yeah.
And Tom's like, oh, the girl with the dog.
Jeez.
And then he says, I haven't seen her. I haven't seen her for a morning walk.
Wow.
But then said, quote, but say, we should go for a sail sometime. Both of you come. I'll bring a girlfriend along, end quote.
Gee whiz.
And when Bill asked Tom if he had gone sailing with Martha on Friday, because Bill kind of knew that that was the plan.
Yeah.
Tom said that he would have never gone sailing with Martha alone. It wouldn't have been right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then he says, I didn't even sail on Friday. Couldn't have been me. I didn't even go sailing.
Okay.
But when Bill is leaving, Tom says to him, quote, I'll be sure to say a prayer for her, end quote.
Jeez.
I'll bet.
What a scumbag.
Well, you better give your heart to Jesus, Tom, because your ass is about to belong to a Salem witch.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
That's called foreshadowing.
Now it's getting interesting.
At around 9 that morning, the police arrive at the Brailsfords' home. Bill's got this tight-knit group of people with him. He's called everybody he can think of, and a few of their neighbors said that Martha said she had been planning to sail with, quote, a friend on Friday. But the only friend Bill could not fully rule out was Tom Maimoni.
Right.
And Bill talks about the fact that Martha had befriended him because he was a widower. So they want to set up search parties. They've got all these flyers out. But the police, of course, they're like, look, we got to look at the husband first.
Yeah.
And they didn't think that his voice was showing any emotion. They didn't think Bill was showing enough emotion over his wife being missing. But his friends were like, look, guys, this is just him.
Yeah.
And then Bill is quickly eliminated as a suspect.
Okay.
But then Detective Conrad Prosanowski went to Tom's house to ask him some questions. And when he knocked on the door, there was no answer.
Okay.
So he made a quick call to Tom's answering machine from his car phone. It's 1991, from his car phone. And then he headed back down to the park. And within minutes, the station radioed him to say that Tom had called back. So Conrad turns around. Detective Prosnowski turns around. He's going to go back and talk to Tom. He needs to find out what he knows.
Right.
And when the detective first talks to Tom is confused, like he doesn't know who they're talking about. So that whole Martha who kind of thing.
Right.
But then he finally says that the two of them, he and Martha, had met last spring while walking their dogs near the ruins of Fort Lee. And they became friendly. And they would chat as they made the circuit around the willows, around Winter Island, just walking with the dogs.
Right.
And interestingly enough, Tom tells the detective that Martha had told him about a nude sunbather who parked himself each day on one of the Winter Island beaches. So he's kind of being like, I didn't go sailing, but she did talk about this creepy guy who was nude, sunbathing nude.
Misdirection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom told the detective that on Friday, July 12th, he saw Martha early in the morning around 7 near the parking booth on Winter Island in the company of 2 women.
Okay.
She spoke with him for just a second and then went back to her friends. And Tom said that was the last time he saw her. She did not go sailing with him. In fact, again, he says, I didn't go sailing at all on Friday. Now, remember, his friends have seen his stuff hanging out that night, and they're like, oh, Tom went for a sail.
Right.
And just as he's wrapping everything up, the detective's ready to leave, and Tom says out of the blue, quote, Martha was a free spirit, overly friendly, end quote. He tells the detective, listen, if I had wanted Martha to get on my boat and go sailing with me, she would have. But I would never do that because I would never do anything to jeopardize my marriage.
He's finally admitting he's married.
Marriage.
There you go.
And the detective's bells and whistles are going off in his head. He's like, wait a minute. This dude is acting strange. And secondly, he's supposed to be a widower.
Yeah.
And I think he realized what he said because suddenly Tom starts talking about how his previous wife had been a victim of cancer. And he mentioned that her death had been a topic of conversation between him and Martha. And Martha had been very sympathetic. And when the detective asked if Martha knew he was married, he said, quote, oh, yes, she knew I was married. We talked about the possibility of her and Bill going sailing with my wife and me, end quote.
He's quick. Got to give him that.
And then the detective says to him, look, Tom, I'm investigating a missing person. I need to know, were the two of you having an affair? I mean, this is just between the two of us.
Right. Maybe
she's upset over something, is just getting away, needs to think things through. But did you guys have something going on? But Tom denies that and says, no. Patty and I are in a really good place, his wife. And that his relationship with Martha was just friends. It was casual. And then he added reassuringly that he and Patty were deeply religious and would say a prayer for Martha.
Oh, man. He's going to burn in hell just for that.
But the detective is sitting there thinking, and then I actually read this. The detective is like, this guy is the biggest bullshitter.
Yep.
Because he's looking around this condominium. There's no crucifix. There's no stars of David, no Buddhas, nothing.
Yep.
And what he was saying was just not matching up with him or his surroundings.
Sure.
But as the detective is leaving, Tom says to him, quote, you know what always bothered me about Martha? The fact that she took so easily to strangers, end quote.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next day, Detective Sergeant Prosnowski tried to piece together Martha's day before she disappeared. He spoke with the 2 neighbors that Martha saw as she was going sailing with, quote, a friend.
Right.
Then at a bait shop on Willow's Pier, the detective talks to the owner who tells him, yeah, I know Martha, and I saw her. And I actually know what time I saw her, 1:20 p.m.
Boom.
And the dockhand that worked there even knew what she was wearing. Khaki shorts, pink shirt, hair in French braids. Martha's really cute. She'd turned his head and he noticed her.
Right.
And he saw her boarding a sailboat. He described the sailor and the boat, and it fit Tom. But when they needed this dockhand to ID the boat for sure,
Right.
he wasn't so sure. They go to the yacht club to look for the sailboat, and who pulls up in his sailboat but Tom Maimoni?
Uh-oh.
And he waves at Detective Conrad Prosnowski and says, hey, Connie, like they're long-lost friends.
Jeez. Guy's got some cojones.
I was thinking the same thing, right?
Man.
He's got big balls.
Yep.
We'd have to ask Rosemary and the other girls if that's true or not, since he stripped down for him.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, by Sunday, she disappears on Friday. By Sunday, Bill's friends and family, they're in high gear searching for Martha.
Right.
But they weren't the only ones, along with the police, working the case.
Okay.
Even the FBI had been contacted by Martha's family.
Oh, really?
Who was seriously conducting their own investigation.
Wow.
And when a woman called the hotline to say that her 2 sons and a friend were fishing off Willow's Pier Friday afternoon and saw Martha in her pink shirt and her khaki shorts and her French braids, it was a good lead. But Martha's brother-in-law had already spoken to these boys before the police got to them.
Wow.
So these days are coming and going, and the police don't have a body, and they don't have Martha, and they've been in helicopters looking for her. They've been crisscrossing everywhere in boats looking for her. The whole town of Salem is on high alert, and they all know that Martha is missing. But even though they couldn't positively ID the sailboat, according to the owner of the bait shop and the dockhand, they were both pretty sure that they saw Martha sail off with Tom Maimoni. So when police confront him on July 15th, 3 days after Martha's been missing, he says, okay, I took Martha on the sailboat to Winter Island, but she got off the boat there. So he knows he's got to say, people have seen him with her.
Yep.
But more and more people are coming forward with sightings of the 2 of them outside of the dock. And Tom changed his story again. He tells Detective Conrad Prosnowski, okay, here's what happened. Martha was standing up in the front of the boat and a rogue wave hit. And she lost her balance and she hit her head and she fell off the side and disappeared into the water off of Gloucester. And he claimed that he searched for her all night, but never found her. He searched for her all night in the boat that his friends saw docked in his slip at 8 o'clock.
Yep.
So why didn't he radio from the boat? Why didn't he contact the police as soon as he got back to shore? And Tom says he didn't because he, quote, panicked, end quote. So these boats are crisscrossing the water off of Gloucester because he said that that's where it happened. But they don't arrest or detain Tom. Now, why, I don't know.
Yeah.
But in one source I read that they simply didn't think he would flee. He does.
Yeah, what do you think? Jeez.
Yes. After this third interview and story, he's gone.
Yeah.
And as all these tips start coming into the police station, the police make a call of their own to Laurie Cabot. Laurie is the official witch of Salem.
Oh.
And was proclaimed so by Governor Mike Dukakis himself in the mid-70s.
Really?
But Laurie is so much more than a witch. She's also a psychic medium.
Okay.
Much like our official Hitched to Homicide psychic medium, Catherine Kaufman.
Who is not a witch.
Who is not a witch.
Just
want to
make that
me
clear.
make that distinction.
Exactly.
She is not. But I will put links to both Laurie and Catherine's websites in the show notes.
Okay.
So they contact Laurie. She gets a phone call from the police captain, Paul Murphy, who says, can you help us with this case?
Right.
So I did a little digging into the witches of Salem. Witches use witchcraft as a science, an art, and a religion. They use their knowledge and magic in harmony with the universe and nature around them.
Okay.
Much of what they do is verifiable, and there is nothing supernatural, occult, or anything like that in what they do.
Gotcha.
But Laurie is happy to help the police, and all she wanted was the person's name, where they lived, and their birth date. And it really reminded me of Catherine because she has done cases with us before, and I'll just give her a picture. That's it, nothing more.
Right.
Laurie then went into alpha state. And alpha brainwaves are characterized by an alert yet calm mind. And when Laurie is in this state, events from the past come back to her vividly. Laurie told police that she saw Martha on a sailboat with a man. And according to Laurie, Martha is trying to enjoy the boat ride, but the man with her is making inappropriate advances toward her.
Wow.
And according to Laurie, he, quote, basically turns into a beast, end quote. And then he comes at her and grabs her. She sees him picking up something that, quote, belonged to the boat, end quote, and he hits her 3 strikes on the head.
Jeez.
Once she's unconscious, Laurie says he then tied a small anchor to her foot and weighted down her waist.
No.
She tells police that Martha's body was underwater near a small offshore island with a lighthouse in view.
Okay.
And she says Martha still has this anchor tied to her foot and a weight around her waist.
Wow.
Within hours of Laurie having this vision, a lobsterman named Hooper Goodwin. What a great name. He's a lobsterman, and his name is Hooper Goodwin.
And he was in the movie Jaws. No, I'm just kidding.
That's what it made me think of.
Yeah.
But he just happens to be out checking his traps, his lobster pots. He's in Massachusetts Bay off of Marblehead.
Right.
And as one of the traps returned to the surface, he noticed an anchor attached to it. And when he looked closer, he sees there's rope and fishing line dangling from it. And the line dangled down the side of the trap and into the water. He then sees that it appears to be attached to a body.
Wow.
Martha has been found.
Gee whiz.
And as Laurie predicted, an anchor was tied to her foot and a diving belt encircled her waist.
Wow.
Her body was nude and almost skeletal because of the salt water and the marine life.
Sure.
An autopsy determined she had drowned. She also received several blunt force trauma wounds to her head, 5 impact injuries, a blow to the jaw, a blow to the chin, and 3 separate blows to the head, which is exactly what Laurie had said.
Yeah.
3 blows to the head.
So if the autopsy showed that she drowned, she was still alive when
Yes,
he
she
dumped.
was.
Oh,
Yes, she was.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The most serious blow to her head was at the top of her forehead, causing bleeding under the scalp. And the location of the body was also, as Laurie had said, near a small offshore island with a lighthouse in view. Now, when Martha's body is found, police go to Tom's house, where they see Patty, his wife, getting the newspaper off the front porch. And what they don't know is that Tom has hopped in his 1987 silver Ford Taurus and flown the coop. So police knock on the door, but Patty doesn't answer. So they knock down the front door and come in, guns a-blazing.
Yeah.
But Tom is gone.
Nowhere to be found.
An arrest warrant was issued for him, and once again, Captain Murphy calls Laurie Cabot, and she looks into where Tom might have gone. And during this vision, she says that she sees Tom looking at himself in a mirror, and he's shaving off his mustache.
Wow.
She said he was frantic and unsure what to do next or where to go next. He first thought of going south or west, but he changed his mind and decided to go north to Canada. Laurie offered to conjure up, get this, a binding spell to derail Tom's plans.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, this is cool.
She used a straw doll. She named it Tom Maimoni. She wrapped it with white cord, and then she went into, quote, alpha, end quote, and projected for him to do something really stupid to be caught.
Really?
Yes.
That's awesome.
This is the whole reason I chose this case, because
cool.
it's so interesting.
Yeah.
But Tom is on the run. He's actually staying at the International Motel in Cowlitz, Maine.
Okay.
So he has gone north. 3 days later, on July 20th, 8 days after Tom has knocked Martha unconscious and tossed her overboard to drown, Tom, after running out of money, breaks into a vacant summer cabin on Route 1 in Waite, Maine, which is this tiny little logging town of 180 people.
Oh, wow.
He is 20 miles from the Canadian border. Now, because this area is so tiny, a local caretaker named Ronald Williams sees a silver Taurus parked in the driveway of a cabin that he knows is vacant.
Right.
And he can tell that the air conditioning has been turned on, and he can see that the back door has been forced open. Quote, I knew something was fishy, so I called the police, end quote.
There's your stupid move.
I just love these quotes from the newspaper. When the police arrive, they walk in to find Tom Maimoni taking a nap on the couch. He had left the cabin basically untouched, except for the beds. Tom, like Goldilocks, had slept in every single one of them because he was trying to find a cool spot. It was hot.
Wow.
And he couldn't cool off.
Wow.
He leaves the cabin voluntarily. He lays flat on the ground in front of the cabin on the lawn. He has, just as Laurie Cabot said, shaved his mustache.
Wow.
And he tells the Maine cops, quote, I'm in a little trouble down in Massachusetts.
Well, there's an understatement.
Yeah. And he does say to them, I killed a woman, end quote.
Wow.
So were these the stupid things that Laurie's binding spell did?
Yeah.
Hard to know.
Yeah.
But he has actually confessed. Think about this. He confessed to it.
Right.
Before they can even take this guy to trial, they have trouble at the courthouse. Tom had come on and approached so many women. He'd come on to so many women in the area. They had to dismiss a court stenographer because he'd made a pass at her.
Holy cow.
And 2 members of the jury pool had to be dismissed too for the exact same reason. They knew creepy Tom.
Wow. I got no words.
2 years later at his trial, he says, quote, I'm innocent, end quote. And here comes story number 5.
Uh-oh.
Tom said the real story was that she was knocked overboard by a wave. He also claimed that he pulled her back on the boat and removed her clothes to prevent hypothermia, right? Because remember, she's found naked with no clothes on.
Okay.
So if she fell over and didn't have a chance, to like catch herself or anything,
right.
Why is she naked?
Yeah.
And he credits himself for finding Martha in the water, pulling her back on the deck, and working desperately to revive her with CPR and mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
Whatever, dude.
He testified that he panicked after she died, and because he could not bear to have the body on the boat, he attached the weight belt and the anchor and threw the victim into the water.
Nice try. Nice try, Tom.
When he realized she was seriously injured, he, quote, panicked. Yeah.
Whatever.
Tom and his attorney will say the blows to her head came from the lobsterman who pulled her body up. Hooper Goodwin. They're blaming him.
Jeez.
But the coroner showed that those injuries all occurred prior to her death.
Yeah.
Prosecutors, however, say that Tom had tricked Martha into coming aboard. He reportedly told her that his wife had recently died of cancer. Wonder if Patty was in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. I was going to ask about her, but.
Yeah. Martha told her sister that she, quote, felt badly, end quote, for Tom. And the prosecution had the testimony of 3 other women he'd used the same ruse with to get them to go sailing with him.
Yeah.
Rosemary Farmer and Roxy Platt went sailing with him just a week prior to Martha's death, and he took his clothes off both times.
Right.
Yeah, these 2 women get on the stand, and they're like, he took his clothes off,
Yeah.
he had an erection, he wouldn't stop leaving me alone, he was grabbing me all while on board, I wanted to go back, he wouldn't take me.
Right.
Then Tom takes the stand in his own defense. This has got to be good.
Yeah. Here comes some hits.
He's going to tell his story, how he tried to save her, how it wasn't his fault that she went overboard. He was guilty of panicking and weighing her body down, but he was not a murderer. And the prosecution dismantled this guy piece by piece, telling the jury of not only his lies about the women and what he did to Martha, but his entire life. He'd been married 4 times. His current wife, Patty, thought she was his second wife.
Jeez.
He'd never been to RISD or the University of Rhode Island. He never worked for NASA. All of these things. And the DA basically says he's a liar.
Yeah.
Why would he be now, just now, deciding to tell the truth?
Right.
So Tom's defense was that he suffered from, quote, several interlocking personality disorders, end quote. Well, okay.
That's all you got?
That's all he had. Interlocking personality disorders. He's a pathological liar.
Yeah.
He had expert testimony at the trial to say that he's compelled to lie due to a, quote, mental condition. Yeah, he's a fake and a liar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay.
In the end, the jury did not believe Tom Maimoni, and after 7.5 hours of deliberating, they found him guilty of second-degree murder and Martha's death. He was sentenced to life in prison.
Yay.
Now, while he's in prison, he filed frivolous federal lawsuits against witnesses and against the assistant district attorney.
For what?
It's his attempt at harassment, retaliatory harassment.
Okay.
He mailed a bloody pillowcase to the assistant DA.
Wow.
And all of these things come up in his parole hearings.
Yeah.
Because it's second-degree manslaughter and it's 15 to life. So in 15 years, he has his first parole hearing. In 2006, Tom becomes eligible for parole. He's denied. He's also denied during 2011 and 2016. But during the 2016 parole hearing, he claimed that there was a, quote, conspiracy to frame him and that several people, including the witch, were involved.
Wow.
He continued to maintain that Martha's death was an accident. Then on October 18th, 2017, Tom Maimoni died in prison at the age of 72, going to his grave saying he was only innocent of trying to cover up Martha's accidental death.
Yeah.
I mean, how many witnesses do you need?
Yeah.
All of these women. And I believe the witch more than I believe anybody.
Yeah.
She had more details correct than everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. She wasn't even around.
I know.
Yeah.
She went into alpha state.
Yeah.
But that is the story of Martha Brailsford and the sea monster, Tom Maimoni. And that's all I have to say about that. Hey, Hitched to Homicide listeners. Have you read any good books lately? Or have you listened to any good books? All of the Sex and Lies series books, as well as the Jane Doe series, are available on Audible and iTunes. Hotter than hell in half of Alabama, the Sex and Lies series begins with Sex, Lies, and Sweet Tea. There are 9 books to listen to in that series alone. Left as a newborn to die in a dumpster, she has no name. Tossed from foster home to foster home, she has no family. With no known past, she's deemed a perfect fit for a task force Washington denies exists. A selective assassin for the United States government, Jane Doe tracks down known terrorists on domestic soil. The Jane Doe books have been called a bit military, a bit assassin, and a bit genius. Start the new year by listening to a good book by me, Chris Calvert, on Audible or iTunes. Or if you'd like to read, go to chriscalvert.com and download some free books. And thanks for being a listener of Hitched to Homicide.
Well, good riddance to Tom.
You know, I couldn't do a true crime case in Salem and not have a witch involved.
Oh, yeah.
But how amazing is that?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
The binding spell, I couldn't get past that. I mean, the more I read, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, now that I've heard the story, you're going to love this first bless your heart. So let's do a little bless your heart.
Well, bless your heart.
All right. Well, this first one seems a little appropriate since Tom was found napping on the couch in bed.
Goldilocks.
Yeah, Goldilocks. So this first one I'm calling Cleanliness is Next to Godliness. Now, I know I've done the Catching a Sleeping Burglar before, but this one has a little bit of a twist.
Okay.
A retired couple from Lancashire returned home from holiday in 2014 to discover a burglar fast asleep in their bed.
No.
Yeah, like I said.
Like Goldilocks.
Yeah, we've done that
like
before.
Tom.
Now, Martin Holtby and Pat Dyson were amazed to find their intruder and I cannot pronounce his name. It's Lukasz Shoganowski, had done their dishes, bought some groceries, and here's the twist, and even washed his underwear.
Oh my gosh. Did a load of laundry.
He did. Miss Dyson
Had a little laundry. It's like having your kids home from college.
Yep. Miss Dyson said their house wasn't too tidy when they went away, but Chanowski, who originally from Poland but moved to Leeds, had kindly tidied up. Wasn't that nice of him?
That was mighty nice of him.
Right. Now, he did burn an old saucepan, but that happens, she added. Chanowski.
That's what she said, but that happens.
But that happens, you know.
Oh, my gosh.
He was 28. He admitted burglary and was given 2 years conditional discharge in order to pay £200 cost.
Oh,
yeah.
Bless his heart.
Yeah.
Burnt that saucepan, man. You got to be careful.
It just made me laugh when I said.
But that happens.
Yeah, but when he also washed his underwear.
Yeah. I said it's like having your kid home from school, except for them cleaning.
Yeah, exactly. All right, here's the next one. He had a bad day, or okay, I'm just stupid.
Okay.
A hapless holdup of a news agent in Abington, Oxfordshire.
Oh, we're just over the pond, all over the place today.
Yeah, I just went to Europe this time.
Okay.
He was captured on CCTV in 2012. During his attempt heist, James Allen removed his ski mask, fell over a drinks display, and then could not open the door to escape because he was pushing instead of pulling.
Oh my gosh, that's like a Far Side cartoon or something.
Yeah, the lady he had just held up with a toy gun had come and opened it for him.
Oh, here, let me get that for you, honey.
Yeah. Not only that, he also tried to rob the same shop 10 days earlier. Allen, then 29, and of no fixed address, was sentenced to 3 years in prison for the offense shown in the video, and 2 years for the possession of a firearm or imitation firearm to run concurrently.
Oh, bless his heart. He had a squirt gun and he went to jail.
Oh, my gosh. But I love the fact that she went and helped him out.
Let me get that for you. That happens. It happens.
It happens. All right. I'm calling this I Hate Technology.
Is this about me?
No.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I seem to have an electromagnetic field that makes everything go wacko.
Yeah, this one happens in Pretoria, South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, a suspected car thief was foiled when the auto lock system of the car he allegedly broke into trapped him inside.
The what kind of lock system?
Auto lock.
Oh.
It was an auto lock kind of thing, and it locked him in. He couldn't get out. According to the Star newspaper, the man was stuck for an hour and a half shouting for help while amused passerbys pointed and laughed at him.
Waved. Ha, you're stuck. Ha, ha.
The newspaper reports that when the owner of the car returned, she yelled, "What are you doing in my car?" before unlocking it, at which point officers from Pretoria Central Police Station promptly arrested him.
Well, that happens.
It happens. All right. And last but not least.
I can't let it go. Sorry.
It is a good line. And last but not least, your credit's no good here.
Okay.
One wannabe thief had obviously watched too much TV.
As they usually do.
Yeah, exactly. When the 29-year-old tried to break into his neighbor's flat by using a bank card, he woke up the owner.
Oh, yeah.
In the thief's haste to get away, the card snapped in half, leaving behind his name and account details. The victim called up and read us the details off the card, the guy that was robbed.
Yeah.
Police said, when we got to the burglar's house, the other half of the bank card was on his kitchen table.
Can't even dispose of it to say, that wasn't me. My wallet was stolen.
I don't know how that got there.
Think, guys. Gotta think.
I know.
Gotta think.
So there you go.
I was hoping that maybe the whole card was left because I was like, they ordered some pizza or got a little Grubhub going on.
Yeah.
Well, that happens.
It happens.
Well, if you have a bless your heart or you know somebody's heart who needs blessing or somebody who burns a saucepan.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I haven't done it before. I have.
Oh, I have.
All you have to do is go to hitchedtohomicide.com. There's a pull-down menu where you can also suggest a case.
Yes.
We love that.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us again today. That's my amazing husband out there.
And that's my beautiful bride in the booth.
Join us next time on Hitched to Homicide.
Bye, y'all.